I'm really excited to put together this video for a presentation of a tutorial that I've been putting together. It's a workflow for world building sci-fi universes, but it's a great workflow that shows how to use many AI tools and to use a structured process in using these tools to accomplish a goal. So even if you're not a sci-fi nerd like myself, even if you're not into creating narratives, this still could be useful for you. And if you are into creating useful narratives, I encourage you to start adopting AI tools. These do not replace your creativity if you use them right. You can zone them in on your vision, and the end product is a product of your imagination. Step one is the initial AI brainstorming. This step is all about capturing early, unfiltered creative energy, allowing raw concepts to emerge naturally. For this, I use Storybuilder GPT, which I want to highlight here and give credit for its excellent prompt framing and focus enhancing features. I'll link it below in the comments. Here's the beginning of the conversation I had with Storyteller. As you can see, it was pretty easy. I just kind of talked to it a little bit about my idea, and it started to come up with questions and suggestions to move me along. I often have downtime at work where I'm waiting for new deliveries to come in, and I have plenty of time to just throw ideas at the AI, brainstorm. Here's an example of just unstructured text that I spoke into my phone about general ideas that I had. It's jumbled, it's not organized, but it doesn't have to be for the AI to catch the drift of what you're trying to do. This disorganized prompt led to this very organized, structured breakdown of my ideas. I was able to read through this and then respond with different adaptations that I was wanting to add to the narrative. This went back and forth for 20 minutes, and we already had the beginning of a solid story. At the end of this conversation, I was able to ask it to summarize everything that we'd come up with and later port that into the rest of our workflow. Step two is all about creating the right environment to develop your project. ChatGPT Projects is the right place for this. The original GPT did not carry a lot of features like search or reasoning, and it also didn't allow you to interact with multiple other files. We'll be able to take all the information that we got from our original brainstorming session and move it into the GPT project. Then we will design custom instructions for the AI within our project so that it'll respond in the appropriate way to be an effective writing partner. Here's the project that I set up. If I click on project files, you can see right here is where I copied the original markdown that I created from the initial brainstorming conversation. Also in here, we can go look at the instructions. I developed these within a conversation in the project so that it had some idea of the context. As you can see, I put special instructions that it should look for connections and contradictions, but that it should try to inspire me and not try to take over the narrative. Encourage it to revisit all the sources and make sure that I was staying relevant to the themes and the concepts. If you're doing a similar project, you might also consider using a tool like AI Advantage's GPT Builder. Igor and the team over there at AI Advantage have put a lot of work into this one. It's one of their most popular GPTs. And what it does well is it provides a good set of instructions for how an LLM is to function. That was the original point of a GPT. And now that instructions have been branching out into things like projects, you can definitely port over that same framework into your projects. The only reason that I hadn't done it was that I was so focused on setting up the project that I had my blinders on a little bit, but I do use this GPT quite often in my workflows. The next step is to create a structured project roadmap. A roadmap is essential for breaking down a big, imaginative world into manageable modular components. It helps ensure narrative coherence and keeps you focused on developing what matters most in each stage. Using a conversation within my project, I created this roadmap. As you can see, it is well structured. It gives topics and subtopics. It frames the basic concepts of our narrative and creates an effective backbone for the rest of the project. We can store it over here in our project files as a markdown. It will act as a blueprint to guide all our future conversation. In this workflow, it'll be important for us to check whether we are duplicating ideas of any well-known sci-fi series, and also identify how our themes fit within the broader genre. Not all AI conversations allow for internet search, but one of the benefits of working inside a ChatGPT project is that you can create a dedicated conversation just for research. Here you can see where I used this conversation to do some research on similar titles. I was able to ask it whether there are other titles out there that have similar themes and are set at similar times. Came up with some pretty good ones like the Expanse series and the Red Mars trilogy. I was able to discuss differences, such as how Red Rising is not nearly as much of a hard science drama. Also, I was able to start to look into whether I was copying any other works too much and try to look for distinctions between the way that I was approaching things and how these previous works had approached things. The next step is all about using reasoning tools to calculate numbers, logic, and feasibility, especially where world building intersects with physics, economics, or engineering. It's important to note that reasoning tools aren't available alongside all other AI features. Many times you could not upload files in previous reasoning models, and you could not use internet search. So it's helpful to create dedicated conversations specifically for this purpose within the project. All right, here's a fun example of one of the ways that I use the reasoning model. I had to get a good idea of how fast some of these ships would be moving and how maneuverable they would be and how much fuel they would take. Here's one example where I asked it how much fuel it would take to move a 1-ton small shuttle about when it was going on these raiding runs. And it was able to calculate based on the type of propulsion what it would take. It does some pretty high-end calculations and gives me a good approximation so I can work that into the narrative. It was also really good about figuring out how much water could be mined from the asteroid belts, how long that would support what size populations, also deciding what timeframes were for ships to move, or what type of fuel sources, what type of propulsion sources would be reasonable for the environment that I was creating. So this was back when 1.0 was the main option, so there was no ability to do research alongside it. So I'd have to feed in the information from the other documents in the product and then break down how these would reasonably apply within the world that I was building. Next, we're going to do deep dives into modular content nodes. Breaking your world building into topics and subtopics, each as its own modular node, helps tremendously with clarity, focus, and long-term organization. Early on in the process, these content nodes came in the form of markdown files. After an extended conversation with the LLM, I would ask it to summarize everything into a markdown file, as you can see here. This could easily be copied and pasted into a file and then updated into the project folder. Later, these nodes took the form of canvas files. I was able to create the canvas file and have the discussion within the canvas instead of waiting till the very end to put out a final report into a markdown file. This added some more flexibility because I could go in and edit things line by line and not have to regenerate an entire markdown file every time I found something incorrect within the output. This kind of modular workflow makes it easy to revisit and revise and expand any individual piece without getting lost in the bigger picture. The next step is one that I'm particularly excited about because the tools just keep on advancing in this area. Advanced project organization is essential for any good workflow. While ChatGPT Projects is an amazing feature for capturing iterations, files, and context-aware chats, its organizational capabilities can become limiting as your world building scales. That's where Notebook LM is king. It's designed for large context navigation, deep document linking, and smarter summarization. Notebook LM is where it's at for organizing and digesting large amounts of information. It helps you organize projects and helps you bring a lot of different disparate facts into one place. As you can see right here, I've downloaded a lot of the source files for the different nodes in my world building project. Here's a good overview right here. But over here in the studio is where the real magic happens of taking all these sources and putting them together in ways that make sense. I'll show you a briefing document first, where it gives a good outline of everything that it understands from there. It gives quotes for the sources that it used within the files here. Turning to the studio, we have a brand new feature called the mind map. This is really good for exploring. I'm going to go in the idea of technology. You can click on it. And then it goes into different types of technology here. Deconstructor bots, propulsion systems, Jupyter's energy harnessing. And it brings up everything from what you clicked right there. You can zone in on a particular area of focus, and it'll create a new report in the chat over here. Quite a cool feature. One of the coolest features, though, that I've found to be very useful is the audio overview. This thing, I'm sure you've heard of it. It creates a podcast of all the information that you've put into your notebook, and the results are amazing. For everything that I've written into this, it created about a 20-minute podcast. And it was really useful hearing my ideas come out of somebody else's mouth, figuratively. And it made it a lot easier to see gaps into what it made it easier for me to see where I had left gaps of my vision out of the material in the notebook. Also, it made it easy for me to see where things were getting misinterpreted, where I hadn't explained things well enough. And these podcasters were making certain assumptions based on the information I'd given them. So it was essential to hear it coming out of somebody else's perspective to make modifications to the source material. I'm going to play a brief 30 to 40 second take on one of the subjects that it was looking at in the source material.
We've talked a lot about politics and economics, but let's get back to AI for a sec. It's not just a tool in this world. It's woven into their cultures and values.
Right. It's one of the coolest things about this whole scenario. We see 3 totally different approaches to AI, each reflecting a different set of priorities.
Yeah, we've got the Venetians with their hive mind that links everyone together. We've got Mars, where AI is all about personal bonds and enhancing communication. And then there are the Jovian tribes, merging their minds for specific tasks. It's fascinating.
It really is. And it makes you think about the future of AI in our own world. What path will we choose? Individual connection, societal efficiency, something else entirely.
That's something we'll have to face as technology keeps advancing. But for now, let's get back to our deep dives and focus on the Jovian tribes.
The final step to all of this is iterative refinement, because world building is never a one and done process. Every new detail can ripple across previously completed sections, and this is why this step is essential. As your ideas evolve, they may affect older modules, forcing you to revisit and revise earlier content to keep everything aligned. For example, one of my thematic elements about avatars being affected by AI drift impacted several earlier sections describing Martian and tribal AI rituals. By reopening those canvases or documents, I was able to adjust their content and re-upload the new versions into the project files. This flexible, cyclical approach ensures that the entire world-building framework remains cohesive and up-to-date without needing to scrap or rebuild from scratch. Just like code bases in software development, this system supports continuous iteration, an essential mindset for crafting robust fictional worlds. What you've seen throughout this presentation is more than just a sci-fi world-building framework. It's a highly adaptable workflow that can be applied to a wide range of creative and analytical domains. Whether you're developing a fantasy setting, designing a tabletop game, creating a simulation for scientific research, or even organizing a product roadmap, this structure of ideation, research, logic checking, modular content building, and iterative refinement can scale and adapt. Importantly, this workflow demonstrates how AI can be a true asset to creativity, not by taking over the process, but by enhancing it. It acts as a responsive thought partner, a tireless assistant, and a logical sounding board that helps you clarify, deepen, and refine your ideas. The key is keeping the human imagination at the center. AI is here to help us express our vision more clearly, not to replace it. It surfaces inconsistencies, offers alternatives, and holds the thread of complexity so we can focus on meaning, aesthetics, and narrative flow. Thanks again for joining me for this walkthrough. I hope it inspires you not just to explore AI-enhanced world building, but to rethink how your own creative workflows might evolve with these tools in hand.